The Vekthari Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 100 star systems, and their warships numbered in the millions. They had conquered over 200 species and crushed every rebellion that ever rose against them. The Vekthari were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black as space itself, and they showed no mercy to anyone who stood in their way. They believed they were the supreme beings in the galaxy, and no one had ever proven them wrong. High Commander Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was one of the most feared military leaders in the Dominion. Under his command were 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a small moon. Today they surrounded a space station called Kithros in a remote sector of space. The station was home to 12,000 civilians from a species called the Fenari. They were peaceful beings who had refused to pay tribute to the Dominion. Zorath had been sent to make an example of them. The Fenari were small and gentle creatures with blue skin and large, sad eyes. They had no military and no weapons. They had simply wanted to live in peace, far from the Dominion's reach. But no one escaped the Dominion. No one ever had, and Zorath believed no one ever would. He watched as his ships moved into attack formation around the station. The Fenari were launching escape pods, but his fighters were picking them off one by one. The screams of the dying echoed through intercepted communications. Zorath felt nothing. This was simply business. This was how the galaxy worked. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak suffered. Then something appeared on his sensors. A single ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the sector. It was small and unknown to any of his databases. His tactical officer studied the readings with confusion on his face. Captain Jack Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute and looked out at the chaos before him. His ship was a Sentinel-class destroyer from the United Earth Navy. They had been exploring the outer reaches of known space when they picked up a distress signal. The signal was in no language they recognized, but the meaning was clear. Someone was dying and begging for help. Jack was a tall man with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. He had served in the Earth Navy for 20 years and commanded the Resolute for the last 5. His crew of 300 men and women trusted him with their lives, and he had never let them down. His executive officer, Commander Katie Morgan, stood beside him. She was a sharp woman with red hair tied back in a practical bun. Her eyes moved across the tactical display, and her face grew pale as she counted the enemy ships. She turned to Jack and spoke in a quiet voice. "Captain, I am reading over 300 alien vessels. They are surrounding what looks like a civilian station. Energy signatures show they are preparing to fire on the station itself." Jack felt his jaw tighten as he watched the escape pods being destroyed. Through the viewport, he could see the massive alien dreadnoughts. Each one was at least 10 times the size of the Resolute. Their weapons glowed with terrible energy, and their hulls were covered in strange markings that looked like symbols of conquest. Lieutenant Ryan Peters sat at the communications station. He was a young man fresh out of the academy, but he had proven himself steady under pressure. "Sir, I am picking up communications from the station. They are begging for help. They say the aliens are going to kill everyone." Jack did not hesitate. "Open a channel, Ryan. All frequencies. Make sure those alien ships can hear us." "IT." Ryan worked his console and nodded. "Channel open, Captain." Jack straightened his uniform and spoke in a clear, firm voice. "Attention, alien vessels. This is Captain Jack Sullivan of the United Earth Navy vessel Resolute. You will cease fire on civilian targets immediately. You will stop attacking those escape pods. You will withdraw from this sector. This is not a request." The bridge fell silent. Every officer on the Resolute knew the odds they were facing. 300 warships against one small destroyer. It was not a battle. It was suicide. On the Eternal Conquest, High Commander Zorath received the transmission with amusement. He had never heard of humans or Earth. His database showed nothing about this species. The ship that faced him was primitive by Vekthari standards. Its shields were weak. Its weapons were laughable. Its crew numbered barely 300 against his force of over 200,000. He opened a return channel but did not bother with words. Instead, he simply ordered 12 of his cruisers to fire a warning shot across the human vessel's bow. Let them see the power they faced. Let them understand their place in the galaxy. The space around the Resolute erupted with weapons fire. A beam of energy passed so close to the hull that the entire ship shook. Alarms blared and crew members grabbed their stations to stay on their feet. Chief Engineer Ben Carter's voice came over the intercom from the engineering deck. "Captain, that was close. Really close. Our shields took some residual damage, just from the energy bleed. If they hit us directly, I do not know if we can survive." Katie Morgan looked at Jack with concern in her eyes. "Sir, they outgun us by a factor I cannot even calculate. We should withdraw and call for reinforcements. Command needs to know about this." Jack watched the station burning below. He watched another escape pod explode as an alien fighter shot it down. Inside that pod were innocent people. Families. Children. People who had done nothing wrong except exist in the path of these conquerors. He thought about his own family back on Earth. His daughter was 7 years old. If she was on that station, he would want someone to help her. He would pray for someone to stand between her and the monsters trying to kill her. "No," Jack said quietly. "We are not leaving these people to die." Katie stared at him. "Sir, we cannot win this fight." Jack turned to face his crew. Every eye on the bridge was fixed on him. They were scared. They were young. Many of them had never seen real combat. But they were also waiting. Waiting for him to tell them what to do. Waiting for him to lead. "All hands, this is the captain," Jack announced over the ship-wide intercom. "Battle stations. We are engaging the enemy fleet. I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. But down on that station, there are innocent people who will die if we do not act. Earth did not send us into space to run from bullies. We hold the line. Whatever it takes, we hold the line." He closed the channel and looked at his helmsman, Lieutenant Danny Hayes. Danny was a skilled pilot with steady nerves and fast reflexes. "Danny, take us between the fleet and that station. Put us right in their path." Danny nodded, and his hands moved across the controls. "Aye, Captain." Moving to intercept, the USS Resolute surged forward toward 300 enemy warships. One small human vessel against an empire that had never known defeat. The crew did not know if they would survive the next hour, but they knew one thing for certain. They would not abandon those people. Not today. Not ever. That was what it meant to be human. High Commander Zorath watched the tiny human ship move between his fleet and the station. He could not believe what he was seeing. This small vessel with its primitive technology was actually positioning itself to fight. The idea was so absurd that he almost laughed. He turned to his tactical officer and gave a simple order. "Destroy it." 12 Victari cruisers opened fire at the same moment. Each cruiser carried enough firepower to level a city. Together, they unleashed a wave of destruction that lit up the darkness of space like a small sun. The energy beams converged on the Resolute from multiple angles. There was no way any ship could survive such an attack. The battle was over before it began. Or so Zorath believed. When the sensors cleared and the light faded, the human ship was still there. It was damaged and trailing smoke from its left side. Sparks flew from hull breaches, and its shields flickered with instability. But it was still there. And it was returning fire. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Jack Sullivan pulled himself up from where the impact had thrown him. Blood ran down his forehead from a cut above his eye, but he ignored it. Around him, his crew was doing the same. They had been knocked down, but they were getting back up. Ben Carter's voice came through the intercom, filled with disbelief. "Captain, I do not know how we survived that. Our shields absorbed most of it, but they are down to 12%. One more hit like that, and we are finished." Katie Morgan was already back at her station running damage reports. "We have hull breaches on decks 7 and 9. Casualty reports coming in. Medical teams are responding. Jack wiped the blood from his eye and looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet had paused. They had expected the Resolute to be destroyed in that first volley. Instead, the little human ship was still fighting. "Then we do not give them a chance to fire again," Jack said. "Danny, get us in close. Right up against their lead ship. So close they cannot hit us without hitting themselves." Danny Hayes pushed the engines to maximum power. The Resolute shot forward like an arrow toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The Vekthari ships tried to track the small vessel, but it moved too fast. It weaved between their formations with maneuvers that should have been impossible. Danny flew by instinct and reflexes that no computer could match. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park sat at the weapons station. She was a calm woman who never lost her focus, even in the worst situations. Her fingers danced across her controls as she analyzed the enemy ships. "Captain, their shields are strong," she reported. "Our standard weapons will not penetrate. But I am detecting a weakness. If we concentrate all our firepower on a single point, we might be able to punch through." Jack nodded. "Do it. Target their lead cruiser. Aim for the reactor core." The Resolute swept past 3 enemy destroyers and came up beneath the largest cruiser in the formation. Lisa locked her weapons on a single spot and fired everything the ship had. Plasma cannons and missile batteries unleashed their fury at one tiny section of the enemy's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. The Vekthari shields held. Then, a crack appeared. The shields flickered and failed at that single point. The Resolute's weapons punched through and struck the cruiser's reactor. The explosion was massive. The lead cruiser broke apart in a ball of fire, and the blast consumed 3 nearby vessels that were too close to escape. 4 Vekthari ships destroyed by a single attack from a vessel they had dismissed as insignificant. On the Eternal Conquest, Zorath rose slowly from his command throne. His 4 hands gripped the armrests so hard that the metal bent beneath his fingers. Around him, his officers stared at their screens in shock. This was not possible. The Vekthari had not lost 4 ships in a single battle in over 1,000 years. Now they had lost 4 ships in less than a minute to one tiny human vessel. "What is this?" Zorath demanded. "How is this happening?" His tactical officer had no answer. The computers had no explanation. The human ship was inferior in every way that could be measured. Yet, it was winning. "All ships focus fire on that vessel," Zorath commanded. The Vekthari fleet turned its attention to the Resolute. Hundreds of weapons locked onto the small destroyer. But Danny Hayes was already moving. He threw the ship into a series of impossible turns that defied the laws of physics. The crew felt their bodies pressed against their seats as the ship spun and rolled through space. Lisa Park kept firing. Every shot was precise. Every target was chosen carefully. She aimed for weak points and critical systems. Another enemy ship lost its engines and drifted helplessly. Another took damage to its weapons array and could no longer fire. In engineering, Ben Carter worked miracles. Power systems that should have failed kept running through sheer willpower and creative solutions. When the main power conduit ruptured, he grabbed emergency sealant and held the broken pipe together with his bare hands while his team worked to repair it. The heat burned through his gloves, but he did not let go. On Deck 4, a fire broke out from a damaged console. Ensign Maria Santos grabbed an extinguisher and put out the flames while the ship shook around her. On Deck 8, a hull breach threatened to vent the atmosphere into space. Lieutenant Kevin Brooks and his damage control team sealed it with emergency panels in less than 2 minutes. The crew of the Resolute fought together as one unit. They did not need orders for every action. They anticipated what was needed and did it without hesitation. Years of training and trust in each other paid off in ways that no enemy could predict. Katie Morgan coordinated everything from the auxiliary bridge after a direct hit damaged the main bridge consoles. She kept track of every system and every crew member. She directed repair teams and medical personnel with calm efficiency, even as explosions rocked the ship. The battle raged on. 1 hour became 2. 2 hours became 3. The Resolute took damage that would have crippled any other vessel, But she kept fighting. Her crew kept fighting. By the end of the third hour, the Vekthari had lost 47 ships. They had never lost more than 3 ships in any battle in their entire recorded history. Their commanders were in shock. Their crews were beginning to feel something they had never felt before. Fear. High Commander Zorath demanded explanations from his advisors. How could this be happening? How could one small ship cause so much destruction? His chief analyst studied the human vessel and its crew. He watched their communications and observed their actions. Finally, he turned to Zorath with confusion in his ancient eyes. "Commander, they are fighting for the civilians on that station," he said. "They are not fighting for territory or resources or power. They are dying to protect strangers, species they have never met. They gain nothing from this battle, except the knowledge that they saved lives." Zorath could not understand. The Vekthari conquered because they were strong. They took what they wanted because they could. The idea of sacrifice for unknown beings made no sense to him, but understanding did not matter. What mattered was that his fleet was being humiliated by a single human ship, and he had no idea how to stop it. The battle entered its 4th hour, and the Resolute was bleeding. Her hull was torn in a dozen places. Fires burned on multiple decks. The port engine was barely functioning, and the starboard shields had failed completely. But she was still fighting. In sickbay, Dr. Amy Walsh worked without rest. The small medical bay was overflowing with wounded crew members. Burns and broken bones and shrapnel wounds filled every bed and lined the corridors outside. Amy moved from patient to patient with steady hands that never trembled. The ship shook violently as another enemy weapon struck the hull, but her surgical tools never wavered. A young ensign named Chris Taylor lay on the operating table. A piece of metal from an exploded console had torn through his side. He was losing blood fast, and his eyes were filled with fear. Amy looked down at him and smiled gently. "You are going to be fine, Chris. I have patched up worse than this. Just hold still and let me work." She operated while the battle raged around her. Explosions made the lights flicker. The deck tilted as Danny Hayes threw the ship into another evasive maneuver. But Amy kept working. She saved Chris Taylor's life and then moved to the next patient without pausing to rest. In engineering, Ben Carter had not slept in over 16 hours. His uniform was covered in grease and burn marks. His hands were wrapped in bandages from where the plasma conduit had burned through his gloves. But he refused to stop. "We need more power to the forward shields," Katie Morgan's voice came through the comm. Ben looked at his team. They were exhausted. Some of them were injured, but every single one of them was still working. He felt a surge of pride in his chest. "I can reroute power from the secondary life support on the empty decks," he said. "It will give you maybe 15% more shield strength. It is not much, but it is something." "Do it," Katie replied. "Every bit helps." Ben's team worked frantically to make the adjustments. They were performing engineering miracles with broken equipment and failing systems. The ship should have been dead hours ago. By every logical calculation, the Resolute should have been destroyed in that first volley. But the crew refused to let her die. On the bridge, Jack Sullivan had not left his command chair since the battle began. The cut on his forehead had been bandaged quickly by a medic, but blood still seeped through. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but his voice remained steady. He watched the tactical display as another enemy ship fell to their weapons. 52 Vekthari vessels destroyed now. An impossible number. A victory that should not exist. But the cost was high. 38 crew members were dead. Another 60 were wounded. The Resolute was held together by emergency repairs and determination. One more major hit might be the end. Katie Morgan's voice came from the auxiliary bridge. "Captain, the escape pods from the station have reached minimum safe distance. The civilians are clear. We have done what we came to do. We can withdraw now." Jack looked at the tactical display. She was right. The mission was complete. The Fenari civilians were safe. They could pull back and call for reinforcements. No one would blame them. They had already achieved the impossible. But Jack thought about what would happen after they left. The Vecthari fleet would regroup. They would find new targets. Tomorrow, or next week, or next month, they would attack another station. More innocent people would die. The cycle would continue because no one had ever stood up to them. No, Jack said. We are not leaving. Katie paused for a moment. Sir, the civilians are safe. We have won. Why stay? Because if we leave now, these aliens will just find new victims tomorrow. They have been doing this for thousands of years because no one has ever stopped them. We have a chance to change that. We have a chance to show them that their actions have consequences. He opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. The civilians are safe. Our primary mission is complete. But I am asking you to stay and finish this fight. I am asking you to send a message to every tyrant in this galaxy. I am asking you to show them what happens when they hurt innocent people. I will not order you to stay. This is a choice. But I believe in this crew. I believe in what we stand for. He closed the channel and waited. For a long moment there was silence. Then voices began coming through the comm. Engineering reported ready. Medical reported ready. Every department and every crew member responded the same way. They were staying. Danny Hayes looked at Jack with fierce determination in his eyes. Where do you want me to take her, Captain? All. Jack pointed at the tactical display. At the center of the enemy fleet sat the Eternal Conquest, the flagship of High Commander Zorath, the symbol of Vecthari power and dominance. Take us straight at them, Jack said, right into the heart of their fleet. Let them see that we are not afraid. The Resolute surged forward. Damaged and burning and barely holding together, she charged toward 300 enemy warships. The Vecthari opened fire with everything they had, but Danny flew through the storm of weapons like a dancer moving through raindrops. Lisa Park fired with mechanical precision. Each shot found its target. Each target fell. The enemy ships began to panic. Their orderly formations broke apart as commanders tried to avoid the human vessel that seemed to be everywhere at once. High Commander Zorath watched his fleet fall into chaos. Ships were colliding with each other in their desperate attempts to destroy or avoid the Resolute. His officers were shouting conflicting orders. Fear had infected his crews like a disease. For the first time in his long military career, Zorath felt doubt. He had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems. He had crushed rebellions that numbered in the millions, but he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that would not stop. An enemy that did not seem to understand that they were supposed to lose. He received reports that some of his ships were requesting permission to withdraw. Withdraw. The word did not exist in the Vecthari military vocabulary, or it had not until today. Zorath denied the requests. He ordered his ships to continue the attack. He would not be humiliated by a single primitive vessel. He would destroy these humans if it cost him half his fleet. But deep inside, a small voice whispered a question he could not answer. What kind of beings were these humans? What drove them to fight against impossible odds for people they had never met? And if one small ship could do this much damage, what would happen when more of them came? The battle continued into its 5th hour. The Resolute was dying, but she was taking the Vecthari Dominion's pride and invincibility with her. And that was something that could never be repaired. The 5th hour of battle pushed the Resolute to her absolute limits. Warning lights flashed across every console on the ship. The hull groaned with stress from damage that should have torn her apart. But still she flew. Still she fought. Danny Hayes had not left the helm controls since the battle began. His fingers moved across the panels with instincts built from years of training and natural talent. Sweat ran down his face and his muscles ached from the constant tension. Every second required split-second decisions that meant life or death for the entire crew. He weaved between 2 enemy destroyers and used their own weapons' fire against them. They shot at the Resolute and hit each other instead. One destroyer's shields failed, and the other's weapons tore through its hull. Danny allowed himself a small smile as both ships broke apart behind them. "Nice flying, Danny," Jack said from his command chair. "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job." Lisa Park, reported from Tactical. Captain, we have destroyed or disabled 63 enemy vessels, but our weapons are running low on power. I estimate we have enough for maybe 20 more concentrated shots. Jack nodded. 20 shots against over 200 remaining enemy ships. The math was not good. But math had not been on their side since the beginning. Katie Morgan's voice came through from the auxiliary bridge. Captain, I am detecting a change in the enemy formation. They are pulling back their smaller vessels and bringing their heavy cruisers to the front. I think they are planning to overwhelm us with firepower. Jack studied the tactical display. Katie was right. Zorath was finally taking them seriously. He was done playing games and experimenting with different tactics. He was going to use brute force to end this battle once and for all. Ben, how are we doing on engines? Jack asked over the comm. Ben Carter's tired voice replied. Port engine is at 40%. Starboard is barely holding together. I can give you full thrust for maybe 5 minutes before something important fails. That might be all we need, Jack said quietly. He turned to Danny. I want you to take us straight at their flagship. Full speed. No evasive maneuvers. Danny turned to look at his captain. Sir, that will take us right through their heaviest firepower. We will be hit multiple times. Courting live. This one. I know. But we need to get close to that flagship. As close as possible. Katie's voice cut in with alarm. Jack, what are you planning? Jack did not answer her question. Instead, he opened a channel to engineering. Ben, I need you to prepare for a reactor overload. On my command, I want you ready to push the core to critical. Silence filled the comm for a long moment. Ben Carter understood what the captain was asking. The reactor core of the Resolute contained enough energy to destroy a small moon. If it went critical near the enemy flagship, the explosion would take out Zorath and everything within 1,000 kilometers. Understood, Captain, Ben finally replied. I will have it ready. The Resolute turned toward the Eternal Conquest and accelerated to maximum speed. The Vec-3 heavy cruisers opened fire with everything they had. Weapons fire slammed into the small human vessel from every direction. The shields failed completely. The hull tore open in new places. Crew members were thrown from their feet as explosions rocked the ship. In sickbay, Dr. Amy Walsh was knocked to the ground. Medical equipment crashed around her. She pulled herself up and continued treating the wounded, even as the room filled with smoke. On Deck 6, a coolant line ruptured and filled the corridor with toxic gas. Ensign Maria Santos sealed the section and rerouted the affected systems before the gas could spread to other areas. Her quick thinking saved a dozen lives. The Resolute pushed through the barrage of weapons fire. Somehow, Danny found paths through the chaos. Somehow, the ship held together. They passed through the line of heavy cruisers and entered the space around the flagship. Jack looked at the massive Vec-3 vessel through the viewport. The Eternal Conquest was a mountain of metal and weapons. It was over 50 times the size of the Resolute. Its guns could have destroyed them 100 times over. But they were too close now. If Zorath fired his main weapons at this range, the explosion would damage his own ship. All stop, Jack ordered. Open a channel to the enemy flagship. Ryan Peters worked his damaged console and nodded. Channel open, sir. Jack stood from his command chair and faced the screen as High Commander Zorath's image appeared. The alien leader looked at him with black eyes that held no warmth or mercy, but Jack saw something else in those eyes now. Something that had not been there at the beginning of this battle. Uncertainty. I am Captain Jack Sullivan, he said, and you have a choice to make. Zorath's 4 arms crossed over his chest in what might have been a gesture of contempt. You are in no position to offer choices, human. Your ship is dying. Your weapons are depleted. In moments, my fleet will destroy you. Jack smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had already made peace with death. You are right. We are dying. We cannot win this battle. But we can choose how we die. Right now, My engineer is preparing to overload our reactor core. When it explodes, it will destroy your flagship and kill you. Your fleet will be leaderless. Your empire will know that one human ship brought the mighty Vecthari to their knees. Zorath's eyes widened slightly. You would destroy yourself just to kill me? That is madness. No, Jack replied. That is humanity. We do not surrender to tyrants. We do not abandon innocence. And we do not let evil go unpunished. You have terrorized this region of space for thousands of years. You have killed millions of innocent people. Today, that ends. Either you withdraw your fleet and leave this sector forever, or we all die together. Your choice. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest fell silent. Zorath stared at the human captain on his screen. He searched for some sign of bluff or deception in those eyes. He found none. This human meant every word. He would destroy himself and his entire crew just to take Zorath with him. For the first time in his life, High Commander Zorath did not know what to do. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed armies. But he had never faced an enemy willing to die rather than surrender. He had never met a species that valued others more than themselves. The silence stretched on as both commanders waited. The fate of thousands hung in the balance, and on the damaged bridge of a dying ship, one human captain stood ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. High Commander Zorath stared at the human captain on his screen for a long time. The silence stretched between them like a living thing. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, his officers waited for orders. On the bridge of the Resolute, the crew waited for death. Zorath had lived for over 300 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had commanded fleets that stretched across star systems. Never, in all those years, had he faced a moment like this. Never had an enemy looked at him with such absolute certainty and such complete acceptance of their own end. He studied the human vessel through his viewport. It was a wreck. Fires burned along its hull. Sections of armor had been torn away completely. The ship should not even be able to maintain life support, much less threaten his flagship. Yet there it sat, ready to die, and ready to take him with it. You cannot be serious, Zorath finally said. You would kill yourself and your entire crew just to destroy me. What could possibly be worth such a price? Jack Sullivan did not hesitate in his answer. Everything. The people on that station. The species you have conquered and enslaved. The future victims you will never have the chance to hurt. All of that is worth more than our lives. All of that is worth dying for. Zorath shook his head slowly. He could not comprehend this way of thinking. The Vecthari valued strength and power above all else. They took what they wanted because they could. The concept of sacrifice for strangers was completely alien to their civilization. If I withdraw, Zorath said carefully, what happens then? You will tell others about this battle. You will tell them that the Vecthari can be defeated. Our reputation will be damaged beyond repair. Yes, Jack agreed. That is exactly what will happen. And maybe the next species you try to conquer will fight back. Maybe the ones you have already enslaved will find hope. Maybe your empire will finally face the consequences of 12,000 years of cruelty. Zorath's 4 hands clenched into fists. Every instinct in his body told him to order his fleet to destroy the human ship, accept the loss of his own life, and eliminate this threat forever. But something stopped him. Something he had never felt before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of what these humans represented. If one small ship could do this much damage, what would happen when their full military came? If one captain could face death with such calm determination, what were the rest of their species like? The Vecthari had survived for 12,000 years by knowing when to fight and when to wait. Zorath was old enough to recognize that this was not the end of a conflict but the beginning of something much larger. Better to retreat now and prepare for what was coming. Very well, human, Zorath said. We will withdraw. This sector is yours. But know that this is not over. The Dominion has a long memory. We will meet again. Number 5. Jack nodded. I look forward to it. The The communication ended. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Zorath turned to his officers and gave an order that had never been spoken in the history of the Vekthari military. All ships withdraw. We are leaving this sector. The Vekthari fleet began to move. One by one, the massive warships turned away from the station and the dying human vessel. They engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the darkness of space. Within an hour, they were gone. All of them. On the Resolute, the crew watched in stunned silence. They had won. Against all odds and all logic, they had won. Jack Sullivan let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. "Ben, stand down the reactor overload," he said quietly. Ben Carter's relieved voice came through the comm. "Already done, sir. I was hoping you would say that." Katie Morgan appeared on the bridge. She had left the auxiliary station and made her way through the damaged corridors to be with the rest of the command crew. Her arm was in a makeshift sling, and her face was covered in soot, but she was smiling. "We did it," she said softly. "I cannot believe we actually did it." Jack looked at his crew. At Danny, still gripping the helm controls. At Lisa, reviewing their weapons status. At Ryan, checking communications. At Katie, standing beside him, like she had through so many battles before. "Send a message to Earth Command," Jack ordered. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them about the Vekthari and their empire. And tell them to send ships. A lot of ships. Because this is not over." 14 hours later, the first Earth rescue vessels arrived. They found the Resolute drifting in space. Her engines were dead. Her life support was failing. But her beacon was still transmitting, and her crew was still alive. 63 crew members had died in the battle. Another 100 were wounded. The ship herself would never fly again. Her hull was too damaged, and her systems too broken. But she had done what she set out to do. The 12,000 Fenari civilians on the station were safe. Every single one of them had survived because a ship full of strangers had been willing to die for them. They watched as the rescue vessels took the wounded humans aboard. They watched, and they remembered. Captain Jack Sullivan was the last to leave the Resolute. Medical officers had to carry him off on a stretcher because he refused to walk away from his ship while any of his crew remained aboard. Katie walked beside him, holding his hand. "Think they will come back?" she asked. Jack looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vekthari were regrouping. Somewhere out there, they were planning their revenge. But somewhere out there, other species were hearing about what happened today. Species that had been oppressed and conquered and enslaved for thousands of years. "Maybe," Jack said. "But next time we will not be alone. And next time, they will know what they are facing." He was right. Within a year, the species that the Vekthari had conquered began reaching out to Earth. They had watched the battle through long-range sensors. They had seen a single human ship defy an empire and win. They had found something they had lost long ago: hope. The Vekthari Dominion fell within a decade. Not to human weapons, but to the coalition of freed species that humanity helped unite. The rebellion spread across 100 star systems, and nothing could stop it. The Vekthari had ruled through fear for 12,000 years. But fear cannot survive in the presence of hope. In the histories that were written afterward, one phrase echoed through countless worlds in countless languages. It was carved into monuments and taught to children and remembered by generations that never knew war. They thought they were untouchable until one human ship arrived. And everything changed. The USS Resolute was rebuilt and turned into a museum. Visitors came from across the galaxy to stand on her bridge and imagine what it must have been like. To face impossible odds and choose to fight anyway. To risk everything for strangers. To be human. And somewhere in the stars, Captain Jack Sullivan smiled. Because that was what it had always been about. Not glory, or victory, or revenge. Just the simple belief that every life matters and that some things are worth dying for. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And the galaxy would never forget.